you own it. Let every mile bring a smile, yeah.
Welcome back to the Road to Life podcast. This week, we've got a really special episode, probably an emotional one.
Yep, buckle up. I'm probably going to cry.
Yeah, it's going to be an emotional episode, but it's a cool one. It's a special one because this week we are talking about what?
My dad and the lessons we learned from his life.
Yeah. So, Bobby passed away. Bobby was Mare's dad, and he went into the hospital middle of October, just after Canadian Thanksgiving, and passed away about 10 days later on the 24th of October.
That's right.
And it was really cool that we got to spend a few days towards the end to spend some time with him, understand a little bit more about his life, and hear some stories from other people who knew him, who came and visited and all that stuff. So it was really cool to kind of have that time.
And we also had that time to reflect on his life and be able to, I don't know, see it from a different perspective almost and pull some lessons out of it.
Yeah, because he's a wild man. He lived fast, he lived in the moment. Like, there's a lot of lessons that I actually pulled from Bobby.
That I didn't really notice day to day. Like, it wasn't until this that I had the perspective to step back and be able to see them. I didn't really appreciate these lessons day to day.
Yeah. But he left us with a gift, and we'd like to pay that gift forward and share the lessons that we learned from a life well lived. So I think the big one for me was just that he lived fast. And he was like 70 years old racing his motorcycle.
Drag racing his
Hayabusa. Like, he rode Harleys day to day, and his Harley was built for speed. Like, he had it rigged so that it could go faster than it normally could.
Yeah, he had 4 motorcycles, but his favorite Harley, I learned later that he had something done to the computer of it to make it faster than it was supposed to be.
But that's not even the one he raced. No. He had a Hayabusa that he was very, very proud was the fastest bike on Prince Edward Island.
Yes.
And he would drag race that thing, and he kept
all the slips,
all the receipts, all the slips for the times that he had. He had a stack of them
in his bedroom, of all of his winning drag races.
And so into his 70s, he raced motorcycles. So one of the lessons that I learned from Bobby was, you're only as old as you feel. Yeah. I would say you wouldn't have been able to tell that he was in his 70s, like talking to him, how he acted, how he lived his life. It was amazing. You're only as old as you feel. He was in great shape. He was like active. He was still going out and dancing, socializing and partying. Yeah, and racing motorcycles. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the bigger lessons I learned, is that you're only as old as you feel.
And he also lived on his terms.
Like, yes.
He lived life his way, unapologetically himself. Like, he wasn't changing for anyone. He would say what was on his mind. He had no filter.
Yeah.
But usually,
for better or worse.
Like, one of the stories we heard when people came through the wake was they went for coffee. Him and a buddy went for coffee, and the buddy got a donut for breakfast, and Dad took it and threw it out the window of the truck.
Yeah, slapped it out of his hand, tossed it. It's like, you can't be eating that.
Yeah. And most people would find that fairly offensive.
Yeah.
But this guy took it as, he cares about me, came from a place of love. And I think he was unapologetically himself. He said what was on his mind. He had no filter, but most people took it the way he intended it, which was coming from a place of caring and love.
Well, it's because he always was there as a person to give you the shirt off his back. He was very clearly someone who was looking out for you. Like, he cared. And so even though the messaging was maybe a little sharp and a little gruff, the love behind it was felt.
And he would give you the shirt off his back. You just had to be okay with it being a Harley t-shirt, because for better or worse, and mostly it's our fault, but that's all he ever wore.
Yeah, we gave him a lot of Harley t-shirts. Whenever we'd travel across the globe, we'd find a Harley store and get him a shirt from.
Same with my sisters.
Yeah.
So, like, the man had 100 Harley t-shirts if he had one.
The other thing that I remember about Bobby was every time I'd see him, I'd ask him, so how are things? How's it going? And he'd always, always, always be positive. No matter what was going on, he would always say, oh, can't complain, or oh, fantastic, oh, so good. Like, you know, like he was always such a positive spirit. And let's be honest, there were times when, you know, life was maybe kicking him.
He didn't have a lot to be positive about some days, but he still would find it.
Every single time. I never heard him complain, oh, you know, whatever, you know, life's kicking me today. It was always, oh, it's a sunny day. Can't get any better than this. Like, there are many times where you would think like, even today, positive. On a day like today, he's out in the rain doing his thing, and it's miserable, it's cold, or whatever, and
He's working outside.
and he's still like, who's got it better than us?
He said it to his sister on one of his last days. Like, we had a really good life, didn't we?
Yeah. So super positive, like always something to be grateful for. I think he always just was grateful for life in general.
He also lived for today. He was shaped by his past for sure. He lived through some shit, so he was shaped by that. But he didn't live there.
Yeah.
And he didn't spend a lot of time, for better or worse, thinking about the future. Consequences were not something he spent a lot of time thinking about. He acted in the moment. He lived for today. He acted in the way that would make him feel good right now. He lived for today, for better or worse.
He was a shoot first, aim later kind of character.
Yeah, very much. And
Yeah.
I say for better or worse because sometimes it wasn't always for better, but I think mostly it was for better. I think that also helped him always see the positive, and living in the moment allows you to experience happiness and joy, and I think he did that.
Yeah. One of the funniest memories I have of Bobby is first time I met him, and we were meeting him for lunch, and he rolls up on his Harley fast, pulls in, and rips off his helmet, rips off his t-shirt, rips off his boots, and comes in for the most aggressive handshake I've ever experienced in my life. Thought he was going to tear my arm off. But the one thing I remember is that he also loved that I gave it right back to him. I squeezed it hard back, and he just, I don't know if it was a test or
He does it to everybody.
what was going on there, but I found it hilarious. And so one of the biggest lessons I learned was be prepared and always have a firm handshake.
He used to arm wrestle all of our boyfriends, so he moved on to the handshake, I think, factor.
Yeah, I don't know
tactic.
what it was, but it was great. Firm handshake, always.
I think he also always looked at life as an adventure.
He did, yeah. And I think that's where you get it.
I know, I also loved that he did what he enjoyed right up to the end, right? He wasn't sick for a long time. It happened suddenly, so like 2 weeks or so before he died, he was on his motorcycle.
Yeah.
He was on the excavator, digging in the dirt. Things he loved to do, he did them right up to the end.
Yeah, and he always, and we talked about it earlier, he went dancing, and he always had time for family, like every family dinner and function, he was always there. His neighborhood block party or whatever, he'd
Like the
show
homecoming,
yeah, he'd show up for that and be the center of attention, be the life of the party. He always made time for the things that mattered to him. So riding his motorcycle, going to the beach on a sunny day with his significant other, just all of the things that meant the most to him in the world, he made time for, which I think is something that we can all do a little better. We can all learn from that. Life gets in the way sometimes, and we lose our perspective on what's important. And I don't think Bobby ever did. I think he always knew what was important to him, and he always made time for it.
Yeah. I think all of these, but especially that one, is a lesson that we can all take and try to do a little more of in our lives.
And then I think one other one that comes to mind for Bobby, I think it became clearer after he passed, and you hear some stories from everybody who knew him coming through and offering their condolences and everything, but he touched so many different lives in so many different ways. Like, it's crazy how many people he helped, and we had no idea that behind the scenes he was doing all this stuff to help people. But it became really clear when we were at the wake and things, and people were like, oh yeah, I remember Bobby came, and you know, he used to plow my driveway after my husband died. He used to come and plow my driveway every time it snowed and all that type of stuff. And so
People you didn't even know, you never heard of, like strangers, basically, that he would take care of, looking out for somebody else.
yeah, he had a big heart.
Which is also showing up we're getting that back a little bit as we go through and deal with, you know, all the things you have to deal with after someone passes, right? Like all the equipment in his shop yard. People are willing to help us deal with this stuff because Dad was always so willing to help them.
Yeah.
So you get it back.
You do. It's not why you did it, though.
No.
He would just do it just for the sake of being a good person. Just make the world a better place. Leave it better than you found it. I think Bobby did that. He left it better than he found it, for sure.
I think that's the big takeaway, actually.
Yeah.
Whew, so it was an emotional episode.
It was, yeah. Yeah, leave the wood pile bigger than you found it. I think Bobby definitely did that. Any last thoughts?
No, just my last question. You know, we took some big lessons from Dad's life. What's one thing you're going to take from this episode and do differently in your life? Pick the one thing and then just do it. Because you never know. You know, we had 10 days with Dad, 8 days knowing that he was going to pass, which is enough time to say goodbye, but not enough time for him to really suffer. So I'm really grateful. But the other big lesson, I guess, is you just don't know. He didn't know. And so do the things.
Yeah.
Make the decisions, take the actions, live your life, because you just don't know.
Yeah, take some lessons from a life well lived. Bobby was an unbelievably great example for us all. So take some lessons from a life well lived and carry forward. Rest in peace, Bobby.
See you next week.
Road of life, yes, you are.